Hello, Popcorn Talk fans. We are here for another episode of iTalk Movies. Today we are talking to director Marlee Roberts about her upcoming film, Little Miss Perfect. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's iTalk Movies.
I always really love that intro. It's just such a epic, sweeping thing. It's so much fun.
Yeah, it's real fun.
Well, welcome back, Popcorn Talk fans. We are here for an episode of iTalk Movies. Today, we are joined by a very special guest. Marlee Roberts is here to talk to us about her film, her career, life in general. How are you doing today?
Doing well, yeah. It's a lot warmer here than it is in New York, so I'll take it.
Oh gosh, I can't even imagine what the temperature is in New York right now.
It was pretty cold. I just got in this weekend.
Oh gosh, yeah. And we're sitting here with our light jackets in California going, oh, it's so cold in the 50s.
Off the shoulder sweater.
Oh, I'm freezing in my little cardigan.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us
Thank
today.
you for having me.
Guys, I'm your host, Megan Salinas. You guys can tweet at me at @themenguin. That's TheMenguin. If you guys haven't already done so, please go to iTunes to rate, subscribe, leave a comment. We love hearing from you, and it is the best way to let our producers know that you like the show that we're putting on. So, Marlee, it's been a while since you've been here. Thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, last time I was here, I was with my sister. So
yeah, you guys were talking about On the Fly. It was the kind of film school portion of the Popcorn Talk Network.
Right.
So your film, Little Miss Perfect, has kind of completed its indie circuit run, at least for the year. How do you feel? It's been numerous screenings throughout over the course of 2016. Yeah. How does it feel kind of being back in California and kind of taking it all in?
A lot better now. I went through some very stressful moments over the summer, but yeah, we started our festival run in January premiering at the Irvine International Film Festival, and we closed the festival, and Carly, who plays our lead actress, who plays the lead in the film, she took home the Emerging Actress Award, and so we got a really good start to our festival run. And then we screened in New York at the DGA Theater, we screened at the Chinese Theater here in Los Angeles, we screened at the Ojai Awareness Film Festival, the Soho Film Festival, and now just wrapping up, and we finally released the movie, which is my goal had been to try to finish it up and release it by the end of this year and kind of start 2017 fresh.
Nice. The again, talking about the indie circuit run, being a resident of Los Angeles myself, I can't imagine what it's like making a movie and then seeing it on screen in the Chinese theater. That in particular must have been a very oh my gosh, this is happening moment.
Yeah, well, I've seen the movie so many times. So at that point, I can't even concentrate on the actual movie. I'm just watching everybody else and their reactions and seeing who laughs at what and who cries at what. And it's been really interesting to see different audiences and target demographics reacting differently. So some older audiences, sometimes they laugh or cry at moments that younger audiences don't even think about, and they're just no, that's just a part of kind of daily thing. And then there are other moments that the younger audiences we find funny or humorous that the older audiences kind of just look over. So it's interesting to see.
Yeah, it's interesting. Given the subject nature of this movie, it's interesting probably to see what resonates with what demographic in particular, especially because it is, it's a serious subject. It's something that, should not be taken lightly, and it's something that certainly the film doesn't take lightly.
Right. Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about the moment you decided you wanted to get into directing, because you've been performing from a very young age. Did you have a eureka moment where you're like, I want to be a storyteller?
No, I think it was a gradual thing. I started off acting when I was 3 years old, and that was kind of just an extracurricular hobby for me. And then I slowly let go of most of my other hobbies like softball and cheerleading and all those other things. And I really stuck with the entertainment industry. And then when I was applying to college, I knew I didn't want to study acting. It was always something that I had loved, but I wanted to try something different and also something that took a little bit more control over my career. And I just applied to film school. And I said if I got in, I would learn the business aspect and some of the technical aspects of making and creating content. So I was accepted to New York University, and I didn't know what I wanted to do in the field, but your freshman year at NYU, you have to do a little bit of everything, which I'm really glad that they make you do that, because you learn a little bit of everything and you gain a perspective that you wouldn't if you didn't have that experience. So I just kind of fell into directing, which is crazy to say because I feel like a lot of people want to do that and then they decide, oh, let's, I'm good at this or that. And I started writing in high school. I wrote my first screenplay. I took an online screenwriting class through virtual high school. And I used some of that as like a portfolio when I was applying. And then when I got into school, that's where I continued writing. I started writing Little Miss Perfect actually, and I really liked directing because I liked working with the actors, and I also liked having a vision for a project and seeing that all the way through and completing it. I'm very much like start to finish.
That's great to hear because I think a lot of people kind of get caught up in that initial creation stage and they get really excited about that. But then when it comes to actually finishing or fine-tuning a project, I think a lot of times people struggle with that.
I think it's super difficult. I mean, I know that I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so letting the project go is a difficult decision. Where, I mean, I would still change things in Little Miss Perfect if I could go back and tweak things. And I know that that's never going to change. I mean, I'm going to see it 10, 20 years from now. I'm going to have new things that I want to change. But at a certain point, you have to just let your baby go and
you have to let go and move on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'll never finish it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there will always be something.
Right.
And I think artists in general, it doesn't matter what medium you're working in, artists will only ever see their imperfections in their work, whereas, everybody else just sees the work as it is, as it's presented to them.
Right.
So, you're always your worst critic. So don't feel bad.
I hope so.
Here's hoping that's the case. Talking about you mentioned you wanted to learn the business side when you initially went to school. Do you find it difficult to kind of reconcile the business aspects of this industry when compared to the creative? Because that's something that a lot of people struggle with. Like, at the end of the day, it is a business to make money. And if the creative work that you're doing doesn't generate revenue, it's hard to get people to back your project.
Absolutely. And that's it. It's a balance. So creatively, you can go all for it. And I think that in the initial stages when you're writing, when you're conceptualizing a project, just letting it all out and not having any inhibitions is wonderful. But then looking at that, once you've kind of let that out, looking at it and saying, okay, how do I make this a viable product is incredibly important because that's how you get support from people. And unfortunately, people don't just back things most of the time because they're interested in it, but that they need a business model. There is a business model for film and for other mediums in general. But it's a balance.
So who did you get to partner with this film to bring it to life? Because you have your creative vision, but then you actually need to get it out there for the real world.
Right. So when I first started writing the film, I worked with 2 clinical psychologists to do research on the subject matter. One in particular was a clinical psychologist at the NYU Child Study Center who focused on adolescent psychology and eating disorders. And she was incredible throughout the project, and she consulted from the original script stages all the way through the final edit and looked at the film to make sure that what we had edited and put together, because you rewrite when you're editing, to make sure that translated equally. So we worked with them and garnered that support, which was really important to me because I wanted to be very truthful and as much as I could.
Authenticity in film and television when it comes to disorders, particularly anorexia and bulimia, it's something that not a ton of films do responsibly. So that's really great to hear that you actually worked with clinical psychologists, professionals who actually know the best way to actually present it to the public.
Thanks. Also, something really important was to make sure that we weren't romanticizing or glamorizing it, which can be a big problem. I mean, people look at film and they want to be like the characters, and if you have a main character that is going through something very difficult, you don't want them to aspire to to do unhealthy things, but you do want them to aspire to overcome like the main character. And so I think that's really important, and that's something that we wanted to make sure got across, and through the help of the psychologist was I think what we were able to do. And then moving forward, I had tried to get the support of some eating disorder organizations, but it was very difficult because at the start, they don't know how the film is actually going to turn out.
Yeah.
So I don't blame them. So we had tried to go out to some people, and it was tough, especially being a first-time filmmaker. They're like, well, we don't really know if you're ever going to make the movie, one, or two, if it's going to come out like crap. So after we made it, we had some educational screenings where we brought in organizations and companies related to the subject matter. And that's when we really got the support from NEDA, the National Eating Disorder Association. We were able to attend the NEDA Walk in New York City and have a booth and get people to do something and take part of our Face Your Beast campaign, which is kind of a social campaign that we did in tandem with the movie. And then one of our early supporters was the Kirsten Haglund Foundation by Miss America 2008, her foundation, and she's been an avid supporter. And a reason why a lot of other projects, companies and organizations came on board, because her foundation's really reputable in the eating disorder world. So with them, then we ended up partnering with EDRS, the Eating Disorder Recovery Specialists, and Project Heal, which is a nonprofit dedicated to financing and giving grants to people who can't afford treatment, which is like incredibly expensive. So it's like treatment for an eating disorder is more than like the top tier college tuition.
Yeah.
So, and this is like to save people's lives. So yeah, it's a really wonderful and powerful organization, and we're really glad to be a part of that. And starting next year, we're going to be doing educational screenings with our partnerships and getting it out to schools.
That's fantastic. So, kind of going back to the initial creative process, why tell this story in particular? You mentioned that it's a very personal story for you, but why, out of all of the stories that you can write when you're an aspiring filmmaker in school and learning the trade, why was this one the one that was near and dear to your heart to put on, put on paper?
Well, I think filmmakers are just like tend to be dark and, and depressing. At least I feel like the early stages of your career. I feel like that's why a lot of filmmakers get into film. But I had this like fascination with control and how people cope with being at a loss of control over their lives. And for some people, that's an eating disorder. For others, it can be alcoholism. For others, like an OCD tendencies or what have you. And so I feel like everyone grapples with control in a very interesting way. And that was what the theme of the movie ended up becoming, and I wanted to continue that look on sort of the duality between our physical selves and our psychological selves. So in the movie, Belle looks into the mirror and sees like a figure almost, and sometimes it's outside of her, sometimes it's within her, and it reminded. That part of the movie always reminds me of that moment sometimes I have when I like look in the mirror, and I don't know if you've ever felt this or if I'm kind of alone in this, but when I pass the mirror and I like glimpse, and sometimes you feel really great about yourself, but you look into the mirror and you like see something different, and vice versa. Sometimes you're like feeling really down on yourself. You look and you're like, wow, like I'm
like, my hair is fabulous today.
Right, and there's just this like kind of weird disparity between the two, and I wonder how that influences like. Does our outer appearance influence how we feel inside, and vice versa? If we feel really great, when we look in the mirror, can we see that greatness within ourselves?
So that's fantastic, especially given the themes and kind of the overall Beauty and the Beast kind of dark fairy tale aspect of this. So what creative influences kind of went into creating this film?
So yeah, the film started as an adaptation of Beauty and the Beast, where Belle and the Beast are one and the same person. And in the original fairy tale, which I went back to the French version and read the traditional the traditional version before all the adaptations and the Disney version. In the original, and something that kind of has stuck through most of the Beauty and the Beast stories has been that the curse is put on the Beast, and he has to learn how to love someone and be loved in return, and that person ends up being Belle. And in our story, I decided to make them one and the same. So Belle really has to learn how to love herself. So that was like the major influence. And when I first started writing it, the movie, we actually called it Beauty and the Beast. And we've got Belle, who's our protagonist, and we've got a father who, so there's like the mother's not really in the picture. Her father sets off on like a work venture in the original. And then there's this motif of the rose throughout the movie. So you can kind of catch a glimpse of all of that in Little Miss Perfect. And then to pay homage to the sort of Disney version, we gave Belle like little bits of yellow throughout the movie. So sometimes she wears in a bracelet, sometimes in a headband, sometimes it's her phone case, and always just symbolizes a little bit of hope within all of the chaos that's going on in her life. So yeah, Beauty and the Beast, first influence. And then to build Belle's character, to not make it so Beauty and the Beast-like, and as it started becoming its own movie and less so an adaptation, we used, Carly and I used Reese Witherspoon's role in Election, Tracy Flick, to kind of give Belle all her perfectionist quirks. And I remember Black Swan had come out recently at the time, and so that was something that we definitely pulled from as well. And then visually, I know my DP and I were really... we really liked Never Let Me Go, the movie, and that was something that we pulled a lot of inspiration from.
Do you think you would do any more dark takes on other fairy tales?
Definitely. Probably make them more contemporary and do something. Yeah. I mean, I hadn't thought about that before, actually. But I think there's something to be said that you have these traditional fairy tales, they've lasted for so long.
There's a reason for
There's
that.
a reason. And if you kind of tap into a core value that story has, I think it has the potential to change a lot of people's lives.
And what a great concept, too, making Beauty and the Beast literally the same entity. I think that's really cool and really fascinating. So you were talking about visualization in the film. And so we want to know, like, can you tell us a little bit about your directorial style in the film, if I could talk, and kind of creating visualization for this character's internal struggle?
Yeah. So my style, I work where everything comes from story and character. And I think that is from being an actor at first. I think all great stories that are told come through the acting and the performance. And then if everything else can really enhance that, if the camera movement can enhance that, so we really feel what the character's feeling. I think it's all emotional. And if you can take audiences on an emotional journey, then you're solid, because they connect with that. And that's how you can get them to experience something new, put themselves in a different perspective, even just change their mindset completely. So yeah, I look at it from an emotional standpoint, and then how do we build all of the technicalities around that to fit that through line of the story. And so most of my inspiration for any kind of movie ends up being the story itself and like the characters and what about them are so special, and that's like what I want to tell. And then my directing is definitely tailored to the actors, giving them whatever they need, giving them space if that's what they needed. Sometimes they don't need anything; they just want you to walk away.
Let's just move on.
Yeah. Well, one of the actresses was, really, she was an independent worker. She plays Lila, the Belle's best friend, and the way that she worked on set was very different from some of the other actors who wanted some guidance or just wanted to like check in here and there, and she like never needed any of that. She was like, I got it. I would give her direction. She's like, okay. And I was like, are you sure? And I mean, she was 15 at the time, so I also want to make sure like all the kids got what they needed. So I think I was overcompensating being my first time directing. I was like, you sure? You understand? She's like, I got it. I'm like, okay, let's just roll on it. I trust her. And she would every single time. I was like, okay, I've learned that she likes to have her private moment and do her thing.
So yeah, talking about that, I mean, you mentioned how great it was working with your little sister as the lead actress for this particular role. What do you think was the most challenging aspect of working on your first feature?
Challenging aspect working on my feature just as a whole, or working with my sister?
No. Well, because you've said in the past that she made it really easy for you.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think was just the most challenging aspect about putting this production together?
I would say, I mean, the whole pre-production is such a blur because you're just day in, day out prepping for something. And, you know, a couple months before we're shooting, I'm like, we're making this project. We shot it over the summer. And everyone's like, but where are all the pieces? Like, you need a crew, you need equipment, you need all this stuff. I was like, we're going to get it to that point, but it's going to take every single day. And I also had my DP, which was so wonderful. He had come on at a really early into development. So he was always championing the film and saying, you can do it. And that was really great. And so I didn't want to let these people down who've also come onto the project and really believed in it. So they helped me keep it going. But I think actually the most challenging has been probably letting it go and having audiences now interpret it in their own way. And then the like internet trolls. Yeah. Like I hate to say it
geez,
because I want to say that they don't bother me, but they kind of do. And now at this point I've just like turned it all off. So I don't like look at it anymore, but it's really hard because you make a movie for, you know, we spent like 5-6 years making this, and then someone spends like 5-6 seconds writing a mean comment, and sometimes they haven't even seen it. They're just like assuming things.
They're just being a troll.
And
exactly.
And so it's hard, and especially because I made a movie that kind of deals with that and deals with like not putting your cyberbullying, not putting your self-worth into other people's hands. And I still find myself struggling with that on a daily basis. So it's like, okay, I just have to remember that I made this movie about it. But yeah, it doesn't stop. You just have to keep going.
Exactly. It's something you have to grapple with every day.
Yeah.
It's not just something that, oh, okay, I'm over it and it's done. It's something that day in and day out, the struggle is real.
Yeah, and that's like the whole concept behind our Face Your Beast campaign, which is the idea that everyone is struggling with something. And so for me, it is that like making sure that my self-worth isn't being measured by the numbers of people watching it or the achievements in general. Like I think self-worth should be measured in your character and if you do good to others. And so I'm focusing now on giving back by going to like the educational screenings and bringing the film to campuses and to rehab centers and wherever I can do that, and kind of focusing away from now like the attention on iTunes and all that stuff.
Now, being drawn to character-driven stories and, you know, wanting to create really compelling characters, how do you kind of balance that creating a story where you have these really compelling characters, but you also have to tie in this relevant social commentary without being preachy? How do you go about doing that in a way where people will feel like it's a meaningful message, as opposed to just, oh, this is just a movie this is just a PSA, it's just lecturing me?
Oh, no, I hate preachy movies. Like, I don't like being like beaten over the head by what I'm supposed to think, and I'm very much an advocate for allowing the audience to think what they want to. And so I think a lot of it is leaving certain things a little bit ambiguous and up to their interpretation. So we do get a lot of like questions when we do
Q&As.
Q&As and kind of talkbacks after the film. We get a lot of questions about certain things in the movie, but I won't spoil it here, that are left ambiguous on purpose. And so I try to frame it in a way that I kind of take it, but everyone has their own way of looking at it, and I think that's the way to do it so that it's not so preachy. I mean, no matter what, you're dealing with a difficult subject, and so at the end of the day, yeah, it's a hard balance, because we worked with the consultants to make sure it wasn't glamorized, but at the same time, it's not like an educational movie for you to like pop into your DVD and like watch in a school setting. It's entertainment piece as well. But I think going back to the emotional, like if you can grab people emotionally, that's what makes the biggest difference. You're forcing them to see somebody else's perspective. I think that's much more beneficial than trying to like spout rhetoric at them.
Just like having the message of the movie in bold print, like this is what it's about.
Right. It's not like I'm not like hounding with this is the way you're going to think, but just take 90 minutes in Belle's shoes and then see for yourself how it feels.
And decide how you think about it and how you feel about it.
Yeah.
I like that. Talking about your creative process, creating a film is an extremely emotionally draining but still fulfilling process. Now, when you're feeling creatively drained, what do you do to kind of refresh your stuff and to like get perspective back?
So when I first started film school, I had this like worry that I had a couple ideas and I would go and I would make these ideas and then it would just like run out. Like I would just be done.
Just done.
Like, I'm serious. I thought, okay, I have this idea for this movie and this, you know, this kind of musical cue, and I have some ideas, and so I would like prolong each project because I'm like, oh, once I'm done, I won't have anything else. But I think working on projects and like creativity breeds creativity in a way. So I'd like work on one and I realized this isn't one project. This is like 5 different ones. There's so many little things that you can then focus on within that one idea. So I think it's just like getting yourself to sit down and really have a go at it, and then realizing, okay, like this one idea that I have is actually maybe 5 different ones, and then putting those aside and coming back to them at a later time. I think that there is something really great about giving a rest to certain projects and coming back to them, taking a break from it. For Little Miss Perfect, I didn't do the first few edits. I wasn't with the editors during that. So I took a break from the material. I let them have a creative stab at it and then came into it and saw what they did. And some of it was, you know, just as I imagined. Some of it was never as I imagined, but better. And some of it was like, all right, let's work on these that are kind of not either of those. And now as I'm working on trying to figure out what I'm going to do next, I look to inspiration of things that I'm really passionate about. For me, it always starts with, you know, Little Miss Perfect was about control. Some themes that are kind of in my head is like internalized oppression and everything that's going on politically in this new political climate. So there's a lot of that rolling around, and so putting that into some sort of form will be like the next creative spur, I suppose.
Yeah, right now I feel like I think a couple weeks ago I saw somebody tweet out that this is a very important time for artists, and to not be afraid to let your creative voice be heard. Times like this, it's so important to have your voice heard and to get your stories out there.
And I think it's so important because we need perspective. We need different perspectives, and we need to understand other people's perspectives. And I think that's what art does. And I think especially with film, it's a medium that you're able to get it out to a wide audience. And I think going back to the whole emotional perspective, if you're able to get someone else to understand, that's what we really need right now, to understand each party. And
yeah, no, absolutely. It's regardless of where you fall, it's nice to have art that challenges your perspective.
Absolutely.
So that you're not living in your own little echo chamber.
And it's up to the audience to really ask for that, right? So like going to movies that do challenge your perspective, that do make you learn something new about a place or a person. I think audiences have that power to decide what they want to pay for, and that means that Hollywood and indie filmmakers can make those projects. So if you're just paying for a movie, that's kind of and it's nice to go to a movie that's just a entertainment piece. That's just fun for the sake of fun. It's an escapism piece. But I think that we as audience members and members of society also have an obligation to make sure that we ask for that really important content.
Yeah. If like entertainment and escapism, it's
great.
Needed. It's great. It's definitely needed.
It's needed like the day after the election, and like everyone's trying to figure stuff out, and you're like, all right, let's just escape
Along
this
with
all for a while.
A full bottle of whiskey or whatever
and
else
like
you
Netflix.
need. But it's also, but if that's all you're consuming, you know, it's the equivalent of having junk food every day.
Right,
you know,
right,
if you're having junk food every day, you know, you should actively ask for things that challenge you as an audience member, not only to learn something about someone else, but to learn about yourself as well.
Yeah.
Like, what do you see when you look in the mirror? Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you talked about when you were in film school wearing a bunch of different hats and how important that is. And I feel like that's really important for a director in particular, because a director has to understand a little bit of everything. They have to understand a lot about, editing and how the story is going to come together, the business side of things so that they can work with their producers.
Yeah.
What do you think is the best piece of advice you were given while you were studying?
Ooh. I always come back to this one, and I guess this is as any creative, but at some point, I think notes are incredibly important. So I like to get as many notes as possible before I really feel like I can make whatever piece of art I'm going to do. I think grasping what's working and what's not, and not taking everyone, but really knowing what's coming across and what isn't is really important. But one professor told me at some point in your movie, let's say, someone is going to suggest you remove or eliminate the very thing that makes you want to make it in the first place. And for me, with Little Miss Perfect, it was that like element of that beast. When Belle sees that in the mirror, and that's her representation of control. And so without that, I lost the theme of the movie. I lost the control, literally. And I think that's what I would recommend anyone think about. So is like, what is that one thing that's keeping you to make this movie? And you can change everything else. Like I was open to changing anything, but once we lost that, the movie's done. It's not something I wanted to make. It didn't mean anything anymore. So yeah, I think recognizing that is very powerful.
It helps you determine what it is. If you don't know the type of story that you're telling or that you want to tell, what's the point in making it? Exactly.
Right.
So talking about all the preparation you guys had to do in order to make this project come to life, what are some of the things that do you like talking to your DP? Do you like working with storyboards, or do you prefer actually just kind of having discussions with your DP to create the visualization?
Oh, because I like mostly slow character-driven dramas, I really like shot listing and pre-visualizing that way. I also found that I started doing this thing on set where I would just diagram the room and then just put the camera angles of how we were shooting. So if we were like in this room and we were putting like a camera here and then like a camera this way, I would diagram that on a like bird's eye view and then like how we would shoot your coverage. And I just do it in a diagram because as we're shooting, we're going through so many setups and changes, I would be able to see what we're lacking just very quickly. And then as a director, I know what I'd have as coverage when I go back and look at it later in the editing room. And so we didn't miss anything. So on set, I really like doing that. Just before we'd go into each new scene, I would just quickly diagram the coverage. I'd show it to my DP. And it's just something that happened naturally on set. I'd show it to my DP and he'd be like, yeah, or no, we're gonna do this one camera move where it's gonna do the 2-in-1. So we're just gonna move it, into the other one. I'm like, great, we got 2-in-1 shot. That's great.
Perfect.
And so by doing that all beforehand, we're not like scrambling for, do we need this? Do we miss that? Or what have you? And then it also helps, I think, make the script supervisor's job a little easier. But if you were doing like more action scenes or anything that's a little bit more with stunts or something intensive, then I would say it'd be great to storyboard. But I'm such a poor drawer that doing storyboards myself would not help anybody.
I mean, even rudimentary ones with stick figures definitely help.
Yeah, even those are pretty bad.
But with the diagrams that you create, I imagine that was extremely helpful being on set, because a lot of first-time directors, one of the things they come to find out is you can and you should prep as much as you can, but there's always going to be something unexpected that happens. And learning to kind of deal with those unexpected things that pop up that nobody could have foreseen. Like that, in my mind, creating those diagrams probably helps mitigate that at least a little bit.
Yeah. Gosh, there's so many things that pop up. Yeah. And also, if you shoot something and you need to come back to it, let's say you're done for the day and you ran out of time and now you're going to have to do a pickup or what have you. You can at least know what you got without having to go and check the dailies or bother anybody else. You can kind of put that in your own head, and it's hard because it's all up here. So it's like a puzzle, but you're doing it all in your head. And so if you put some of it down, it's a little bit easier, I would say.
You're like, oh yeah, this was our camera movement yesterday.
Right.
You can pick up just where you left off.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it was a very personal project for you, and there were a lot of difficulties, and you have to maneuver on the fly to kind of, deal with the daily problems as they come up. That being said, do you have a moment in particular while you were on set where you had you thought to yourself this was your favorite moment behind the scenes, like a this is actually happening sort of moment?
Yeah, I had a couple of those. One that just immediately comes to mind was when we were shooting our grand ballroom scenes. And we had a lot of people on set that day, between extras and then all their parents. And then, because we shot with mostly minors.
Kids, yeah.
And the lead talent and their parents. And then we had extra crew because we were decorating and setting up and lighting a huge ballroom. And there was this dance. It's like the big sort of climax at the end. And it just felt like we were all at a school dance. It felt like we were all at prom together. It was kind of warped, and we had a little band that was playing and everything. And when we were done shooting all the scene stuff, we had to get B-roll and of people dancing and having a good time. And so we just put up the music, and we're like, what better thing can we do instead of staging every little bit and piece of it? Let's just put some music on, lighting, have some fun with the lights, do whatever you think is fun. And we literally went around, DP handheld, went around the room, this huge room, and would just capture little moments that people were having at this faux dance. And our crew, some of them got dressed up and joined the extras. So you can see little bits of the crew doing it. And then the rest of the crew, who was our ACs and even our gaffer, and I'm trying to remember who else was around. It's such a crazy blur. But they would, every time the camera would spin in that direction, they'd have to drop or hide somewhere. So we would just point out that we're coming there next, and then they would just disperse. And so in our footage, we do have just crew members looking horrified that they got caught by the camera. I need to just compile all of that footage.
Just a blooper reel of just crew members looking like deer in the headlights.
There's just a beautiful party and everyone's dressed up, and then there's crew members who weren't supposed to be in the shot.
With a boom, just
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I would love to see that compilation. That sounds so great.
I have to go back and find that.
You talked about again, not wanting to be too preachy and wanting a story where you left enough for the audience to kind of make up their mind about how they felt about this particular issue and about these characters and about this journey. That being said, if there's one thing you want people to take away from it, what do you think that would be?
I would say that you are worth something. I think it's very hard to find that nowadays, and that your worth isn't measured by numbers. And that's a line that's in the movie, whether it's numbers of friends, followers, likes, votes. In this case, our main character is she runs for student class president, and so whatever that is, pounds, your worth isn't measured in numbers.
You don't have to quantify it.
Yeah.
I like that. I think that's a good message. Well, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, we actually do have the trailer. And so we can go ahead and play that right now.
I got elected class president. Congrats! Oh, thanks. Why don't you ever ask me how my day at school goes, Dad?
We know we don't have to worry about you, Belle.
I believe in control. Mom? Mom?
She just needs time.
For what?
For herself.
Mom, where are you?
Why are you on this page?
It's just inspo. The inspiration. Just inspiration to keep fit.
I know what Thinspo is.
Don't tell anyone?
Is everything all right?
Fine.
You're not planning on killing yourself or anything, right?
I'm done being on the track everyone thinks I want to be on.
I'm worried about you.
What are you trying to be, anyway? You trying to be more like your mother?
You're only lying to yourself.
Life isn't perfect. You can't always get what you want, but you can get pretty close.
You're 85.
Really?
What's with your attitude?
Sorry, I'm not perfect.
You're perfect.
I need you to eat something.
I'm really not that hungry.
Starving yourself isn't good for you neither.
I'm not crying. You're crying. It's fine. Yeah. No, especially having, just talked about it to the degree. It's like watching the trailer again. It's like, oh, it's very heart-wrenching.
Oh, I'm glad. I've
yeah.
seen it like thousands of times, so I wish I had that same reaction.
I haven't hit the 1,000 mark yet. But you guys were talking about how on your website, you guys actually did have a goal, because that trailer in particular has over 100,000 views on it.
Yeah. So we said once we reached 100,000, we would release some new content for everyone. So that'll be coming out soon. We have some great stuff coming out. We just partnered with the Would I Be project, and so we will have. I think I'm spoiling it now, but we'll have some photos coming out, because our cast photographed with their insecurity, with their character's insecurity. For the project, so it's going to be some cool stuff.
Well, that's fantastic. So yeah, where can people go if they want to find out more about the film, about where they can see the film, everything like that?
So the film website is www.littlemissperfectmovie.com, and the Facebook page is Little Miss Perfect, and the Twitter and Instagram is at LMP Movie. And my personal is at Marlee Roberts.
Now, before we wrap up, you mentioned kind of letting go and moving on, which is very difficult to do when a project is near and dear to your heart. Mm-hmm. Do you have any upcoming projects that you can talk about that our viewers should know about?
Yeah, I've signed on to direct, not write actually. I'm excited about actually taking someone else's written work and interpreting it as a director. So I signed on to a dramedy, quirky, kind of indie feel, a little lighter than this, which will be a nice break. And I'm also collaborating with my sister, who's now in film school at Columbia in New York.
The star of the film.
Yeah. And she wants to produce and really get into filmmaking herself. So we are conceptualizing some projects and have some science-themed projects in development.
That sounds great. You were talking a little bit about it the last time you were here at the Popcorn Talk Network. So for our show On the Fly, which is all about kind of the film school aspect of things, teaching aspiring filmmakers how to do things. So I know you guys already touched on this, but do you have any other words of advice for aspiring filmmakers and aspiring storytellers?
Gosh, everyone's journey is so different, so it's really hard to speak on a whole level. But I'd say overall, it's all about persistence, because there were so many times where we could have just given up and walked away, and so many times where that seemed like the reasonable option. But in the end, when you just see that one person whose life has changed, when you go to that screening and just see one person who like gives you a hug and says thank you, it makes every bit of it worth it. So persistence, because there's a silver lining.
Well, thank you so much for coming in to talk to us today about your career, about your process, and about this film. I cannot say thank you enough. This was fantastic.
Thanks for having me again.
Of course. For people who missed it before, where can they go to keep up with you and all your projects?
My personal site is marleeroberts.com. That's Marlee with 2 E's. And my Instagram, Twitter is at Marlee Roberts. And the film information, it's littlemissperfectmovie.com, and you can get all of our socials on there as well.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming in today. It was such a pleasure getting to talk to you.
Likewise, thanks.
Thank you. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. As I mentioned before, if you haven't already done so, please go to iTunes to rate, subscribe, leave a comment, because we love hearing from you. If you want to keep up with me, you guys can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at The Menguin. That's TheMenguin. I am also on a bunch of shows at our sister network, AfterBuzz TV, and I write articles for The Movie Chick. That's Chick with 2 Ks. Be sure to check those out. Again, cannot say thank you enough. This was an absolute pleasure.
Likewise.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you all next time.
From producers Maria Menounos,
The views
Kevin
expressed herein are
Undergaro,
those of
Phil
the host
Svitek,
only.
and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.